Today we'll examine future trends in sport. This is a great quote that I think we can all live by in any college class, any aspect of society, but the future is created rather than predicted. So the future that we want in sport is something that we can construct. Thinking about the future, envisioning possibilities, sports and social constructions, they can be invented, redefined, and changed, such as inequity in sport. We have the power to do something about that. The meaning, purpose, and organization of sports in the future will be based on the collective decisions and actions of human beings. And sports are contested activities when people struggle over these decisions. Models for thinking about sports in the future, well, there's the power and performance sports. Will be dominant in immediate future because they reaffirm dominant ideologies. Corporate sponsors give priority to these sports because they reaffirm their interests. They are exclusive and create more spectators than participants. And their popularity depends on power and staying in the control of men who value conquest over others. Questions that people will raise about power and performance sports. How should technology be regulated when exploring human limits? We see that with prosthetic devices in the Paralympic Games and athletes who actually try to cross over and be in mainstream Olympics. How can fairness be guaranteed when there is unequal access to training and technology? How can injuries be minimized and access maximized when the goal is conquest? Models for thinking about sports in the future, well, the pleasure and participation sports. These will grow as connections are valued over confrontation and domination. Corporate sponsors may support these sports more in the future as people question dominant ideologies and maybe protest some of the dominant ideologies. Other factors support the growth of these sports, the concern about health and fitness. Such activities as frisbee golf continue to grow in popularity. Participation performance of older people, again, a sport like frisbee golf is something that can really be enjoyed by someone of any age. Values and experiences that women bring to sports, and groups seeking alternative sports and new ways to do sports are all factors that will lead to increase in pleasure and participation sports. Club sports offer sports that combine elements of power and performance and pleasure and participation. Ultimate is a good example of this. Current trends. Factors supporting the growth of power and performance sports. Will people with power and influence use them to reaffirm the ideologies that legitimize their position in society? They are easy to market and sell. Media can focus on individuals and their stories. Fans identify with individual athletes who endorse products sold to the fans. Factors supporting the growth of pleasure and participation sports. Well, the concerns about health and fitness, as I said earlier, preference among older people, current values and experiences of girls and women, and groups seeking alternatives to power and performance sports. Concerns about health and fitness may encourage sports to have a wellness value. Some older people will emphasize traditional pleasure and participation sports, but others will turn to less traditional or new alternatives. Women and men will play more sports together. Sports organized for pleasure and participation more than power and performance. This is actually in some aspects of rodeo at the not the professional rodeo level, but amateur rodeo level. They have already begun integrating men and women in competition, participating against each other. Women's roller derby is an emerging new sport. It is a power and performance sport, or is it a pleasure and participation sport? Those who favor unstructured activities will seek alternative to power and performance sports. Alternative sports now include much more than extreme sports. Those who favor unstructured activities will seek alternatives to power and performance sports. Alternative sports now include much more than extreme sports. Many alternative sports are not extreme. They may involve competition, but they're organized around pleasure and participation model. The older that I get, the more I tend to enjoy this form of golf rather than the traditional golf. And many pleasure and participation sports offer health benefits as well as connections with other people and the environment. Other alternatives: Paralympics, the Special Olympics, the Gay Games, the Senior Games, Muslim Women's Games, adventure sports. People with disabilities also seek connections through sports, with other people and with the environment. The Gay Games have an emphasis on inclusion. This occurs every 4 years and is hosted several times already in the United States, but an international competition set to be very similar to the Olympic Games, the traditional Olympic Games, yet many of the participants identify as members of the LGBTQ community. Factors influencing trends today: organization and rationalization. Do it the right way. Commercialization and consumption. You are what you buy, wear, and use. Telecommunications and electronic media. Leave my video games and go outside. No way. Technology enhancement is now normal. Demographic changes. Hola, ¿dónde está el campo de fútbol? Current trends. Sports for people with disabilities. Increase in people disabled by war, lack of medical care, and poverty. Increasing recognition that people with disabilities desire to play sports and have the right to expect opportunities. Continuing use of sport participation as therapy. More sports for elite athletes with disabilities. New technologies that facilitate sport participation. More visible examples of sports for elite athletes with disabilities. And emerging ideas, vocabularies, and orientations that support people with a disability and their participation in sports. Now, becoming agents of change, identifying goals. Conservative goal: growth, based on the belief that sports should expand and become more efficient in their current forms, and emphasizes management issues and improving performance. Reformist goals: the improvement, based on a belief that sports are positive and participation opportunities should be increased, emphasizes social inclusion, equity, and fairness. And the radical goal: transformation, based on the belief that dominant sports are fatally flawed, must be reorganized or replaced, emphasizes a critical approach along with structural and ideological changes. But one thing that is certain is that change is occurring, whether it be more conservative or radical. This summer, I am actually training for a Tough Mudder this fall. This was created by students in a Harvard business class. In the push for change outside sports, well, this logo was created to protest the use of offensive Native American logo in a Colorado high school. Regardless of vantage point, being an effective agent of change requires: 1, the visions of what sports and social life could and should be like; 2, willingness to work hard on the strategies needed to turn visions into realities; and 3, political abilities to rally resources that make strategies effective. Deviance in 1968, the track and field athletes, John Carlos and Tommy Smith on the left here, are now lionized as heroes today, with this statue here in Los Angeles, California, but also receiving the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage. So the great sports myth believers often uncritically conclude that a ball can change the world. Even as a slogan, this is naive. Athletes as change agents. Athletes have celebrity and market status, but little real power to reaffirm or transform sports or society. Therefore, they focus on more of the conservative goals. If athletes endorse deep change in society, they risk losing support and media coverage. Athletes often focus on non-contentious issues and use conservative strategies. A good example of this is Michael Jordan. Throughout his career and post-career, he rarely, if ever, spoke out against social injustice that occurs within the African American community in the United States. A great article I read titled "Be Like Mike?" Asks whether he should have been an agent of change. Doing so might have risked financial gain, endorsements, his celebrity status. Colin Kaepernick, on the other hand, did choose this radical approach in 2016, and as you know, was largely criticized by many people, fans of football and other parts of society, and non-fans in society. But he took that risk to push for radical change. To become change agents, athletes require the support of established organizations that can provide them with a cover. Professional sports teams often have programs that serve local populations. This one serves low-income minority youth in Indianapolis. Is this a good place to become a change agent? The future is created rather than predicted. And if we are encouraging each other to force this social change, whether it be conservative or radical, is up to you.